So welcome to Database Office Hours for March 10th. I'm Yanis Roussos, and I'm going to share my screen so that we can check all together the agenda. So the first comment is by Alex. Alex, do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, so unlike the primary database, I don't know how familiar people are with how Geo works, but Geo, when we stand up Geo, we have a secondary tracking database that we can write to, whereas the primary database is read-only because it's replicated from the primary database. So we're still using schema.rb to track changes to that database. One thing we've noticed is that when we use text limits and migrations, those are not getting written to our schema RB, which is concerning. At the moment, I'm not sure if it's the end of the world, though it does seem like we probably should add that back. I don't know the history of our usage of text limits that well, so I'm not entirely sure if we ran into this before in the primary database before we switched to the structure.sql file. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out, did we already fix this one time, and does anybody know anything about that?
So yeah, we switched to using constraints after we switched to using structure.sql. So in the case of the GitLab project, the core GitLab project, we did not have to go back and fix those. So a first question, and I added it in as a comment here, how large are the tables in the geo-tracking database? Can you help us with that?
So it depends on the installation. For our large customers that are using it for disaster recovery, those tables, the replicated tables will, the tables for replicables, so like projects or LFS objects or anything that we replicate and track, we have an every one that we track, we have an entry for in the tracking database. So some of these could be quite large, depending on how many projects or how many objects you're replicating. That includes merge request diffs. So that table is certainly quite large. Does that hopefully answer the question?
So are we talking about millions of records, or?
I think potentially in some cases. I guess it's hard for me to say for sure because I don't know. I don't have the numbers in front of me. We've been trying to collect those numbers actually. one of our biggest pieces of work a big piece of work in project progress right now is we're trying to actually get data on how many things people store on their secondaries. So yeah. I would guess that we have customers that have tables with millions of rows.
Alper, you raised your hand. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I think particularly when we switch to structure.sql, we deprecated MySQL and we want to get most out of Postgres. And structure.sql gives us. So since the GeoDB and the two other DBs live in GitLab, a lot of new developments, including text limits, are going to make life hard if we don't switch them to structure.sql too. So in short, I think the only long-term acceptable solution, because text limits are now actually, it's just a performance issue. As Yanis is right, if we are running rows, then a text limit is going to have a lot of performance. But in the future, some other things can come up. And also all the danger review and all the, let's say Rubocops are done for the GitLab database. So I think we should always long-term try to migrate any child database, let's call them, like this geo prefect, and then I see some other registry or something, and all of them should follow the same let's say roadmap as the main database. And otherwise, in the current issue, we are just talking about a simple performance issue, but we may have really other more severe things there, like if we suddenly decide to add in the structures, let's say a trigger or a function or something like a constraint, which is quite critical. In that case, that whole topic will be a more serious talk rather than What do you think, Yanis? So in short, I think the G database group, maybe Yanis, or the particular teams should have an epic to migrate long-term every database to the same standard as GitLab.
I think that makes sense.
Sorry, there is another concern. So let's say you added the text limit to a particular column in the previous milestone. That will be applied to customers who are upgrading GitLab. But a few releases later, there is a new customer with a completely new installation. They are not going to run the migrations. They will just load up the schema RB, and the text limit will be completely missing from the schema. So that's, I think, one of the biggest concerns at this point.
Yeah, I think as a part of the migration, we're to structure.sql, we're probably gonna have to reapply all of the text limits that we've used.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with Adam, and I also agree with Alper. I think that the long-term goal should be that we use structure.sql. It allows us to add triggers, functions, views, and other Postgres-specific objects that we cannot add using schema RB. My question was about the size, was about how pressing is this? So should we switch immediately, or can we use? So if you were to tell me that all tables are like have 10,000 records each, we could say, okay, we could use varchars, for example, instead of text limits, and think about it in the future. But if we have tables that are multi-million records or even above that, there are serious concerns that make us want to use, for example, constraints instead of varchars. And I have added a link in my comment in the issue about that, because if you ever want to change it, you don't want to. It's way easier using a check constraint. But either way, even if we don't switch to structured SQL, we want to have a consistent, we want those limits to be on all instances, because the limits protects us from edge cases or mistakes that we may have in the models, but also protects us from various inconsistencies that we can see on instances. So we have seen, so for the regular, from the regular GitLab instances, we can see a lot of things not going as we expect them sometimes. So people may take a backup and apply that backup or roll back or do whatever, and something is not as it's expected. So having constraints there, unique index or whatever, protects us also from those cases. So I think that all constraints should be there for new instances and all. And yeah, the best way forward will be to use structured.sql. I don't remember, Pat, did you do the move to structured.sql, or did Andreas do that?
That was Andreas, he did it.
So there is an issue, and the work by Andreas where we moved to structured.sql, it's not super complicated. You have to do some things, but there is already the work and the MRs that we did in order to roll that for the GitLab project. So most probably there is a roadmap to follow on how to do that.
Awesome.
Alex, yeah, go on, please.
No, I was just saying awesome. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
I just checked the usage ping for GitLab.com. Particularly on GitLab.com, we don't have geo enabled, but I didn't find any usage data. So if you want to know, if you think that some customers have large tables on geo, maybe we can add some usage ping metrics for geo, which shows us those values so that we may later make knowledgeable decisions like how big or how many installations we have, how big they are and stuff.
Usage data for replicated objects coming in 1310. It's merged. So, yep, we're aware of this gap. So we have some knowledge about how many nodes people have, and because we know who some of those nodes belong to, we have an idea. We can get an idea of how many rows for some of those objects they've got based on usage for other objects. So like if I look at like merge request diff objects, I don't know what we have counts for. I can never remember what we have counts for, but some of those things we should be able to get estimates on at the very least, because some of our large customers use it for disaster recovery, so they're replicating everything. The other thing I was going to say is I think the going back to string varchars, that ship has potentially already sailed, because with the introduction of the geo self-service framework, our framework, we set it all up with text limits for everything. And so we have just introduced a whole bunch of like fairly large models that use text fields and are supposed to be setting limits, but because we didn't catch it, they're already out there. So we definitely already have some installations that have large sets of replicated text fields that don't have limits on them potentially.
Yeah, just be careful when you reintroduce them to also have a data migration that will check that everything is consistent. Everything should be consistent, but you never know. So it will be a little bit more work on your side when you reintroduce everything.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that answers most of the questions I've got about this. Thanks everybody for your input and your help on this. I know we on the Geo team very much appreciate it.
Okay, so the next comment's by Andreas. He's not in the call. So I don't know if you have checked the database testing rollout and the issue for the database maintainers. Please check it out if you have not, and even if you're not a maintainer, there is a lot of interesting information there. And if you are maintainers, please try to use the testing and leave some feedback. Andreas has added a lot of very nice information there on how it works. We also have a recorded video from past office hours where he explains how it works in detail. Let me show you one of the latest migrations that we used it. So that you can see how it is right now. So for example, here, this is one of my migrations where we roll out the partitioning of webhook logs. So you can see here that in this MR, we can find a couple of migrations that are unrelated because they are not yet have not been on GitLab.com, so they are not in the clone. So nowadays, with the latest update, we don't include statistics for those four. So those two are the ones that are really included by the MR, and you can see the overall statistics for both migrations. You can see the duration. So this one, it was a big one, and we still expect it to be deployed to production today, because this has to schedule 11,000 jobs, because this is the migration that adds the jobs that sync the two tables and bring all the data from the standard table from webhook logs to the partitions. And you can see that now we also have details per query. So if I go right here, you can see how many times each query was called, the total time, the max time, the mean time, and the rows returned. So this can give us confidence that we can ship this migration. So we can check that on average it's 0.1 millisecond, and the max time is 16 milliseconds. So that's great. In this case, for example, we can see that some queries here needed 30 seconds. So that's a red flag that we may have to think about changing. So this is where we find the max, when we do run each batch. So this is a warning that this migration may fail. And it's very helpful for us to know that maybe we have to change something or do something else. And you can see also the rest here where it is the other migration that was adding the partitions and everything, which is also very nice because it gives us confidence of what will happen in production. I don't know if you... and the last one is that as a maintainer, you can always click here and go to the testing pipeline and check the details and check the full migrations running and check the full logs. I'm not going to click it because this recorded video, but you can click there and check. I don't know. Do you have any questions? Do you want anything? Any additional details here?
I just read that, Yanis, the difference between the master is calculated and migrations which are pending from the master to the current branch are done. Are the statistics you were showing then not the statistics for these MR's migrations, but the statistics for any pending migration too? Is there some of like?
So yeah, so with the latest update, you won't see statistics for the other migrations. You will only see statistics for the migrations that are included in this MR. So those are all the pending migrations in this branch, because this branch was rebased with master, and there are also other migrations that have not run. At least they are not there in the clone. The clone is maybe something like an hour back or something like that. But nowadays, we don't. You won't see additional statistics for those. And you can see here the note that this is unrelated to this MR. You will only see here detailed statistics only for the two migrations that are included in this MR.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
Any other question or comment? Okay. Or you can see another one here where we were able to catch a problem with a trigger in production that is not on our developer on structure.sql, and we had forgotten about it, so we had to manually remove it. So I think that we already make a good use of this framework for testing all migrations against production data. So yeah. And Steve had a question there. If it is safe to run all migrations, regular post-migration background migrations. Yes, it is, as Andreas also wrote there. Please use it with everything. Just know that background migrations will not be run yet. So we have not yet implemented a way. So if you schedule, so for example, in this example, where we schedule 10,000 jobs, we don't run them. So if you want to test the specific jobs, this framework won't test them yet. It is on our plans for future iterations to maybe pick a couple of jobs, some jobs from the sidekick queue, and run them so that we can get some statistics also for the background jobs. But at the moment, we will run everything except for the background jobs. So that's it. Anything else? Okay, so another database of ours is in the can. Thank you for participating and see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everybody.